Happy Christmas! Oh, hang on. No, wait a minute. It's March. Oh, it's nearly Easter. Uh, Happy Easter. Let's just jump into the review. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Nick here, and welcome to my first Doctor Who Revisitations review. I've done re-reviews and new reviews of other Doctor Who stories, but this is the first one that will be classified as a revisitation review, as I've technically already done these reviews before, but this is a revisitation to, well, technically all of them have been revisitations in viewing, but these are brand new reviews of stories that I've already reviewed outside of the continuing marathon that started with the Nicholas Payne Retro and Universal Doctor Who reviews that later came onto this channel for the Capaldi years and onwards. So, with that being said, welcome to my revisitation review of the 2016 Doctor Who Christmas special, The Return of Doctor Mysterio, the first Doctor Who episode I reviewed on this channel. I did some for the Universals, but this is the first one I've done for my personal channels. So, The Return of Doctor Mysterio. The plot of this episode is that the Doctor meets this boy called Grant one Christmas, and he gives him this gemstone called the Ghost to look after for a few minutes, but Grant mistakes it for medicine as he's feeling unwell, and so he takes it, meaning that the gemstone's now inside him, and he has superpowers now, as he wants superpowers due to reading a lot of comics. So Grant now has the powers of a superhero, and in his adult life, he becomes this superhero called the Ghost. In his civilian life, shall we say, he is a nanny to the baby daughter of his old high school crush, Lucy Fletcher. Lucy is a reporter, and her latest story is about Harmony Soul, and she's investigating them. And the Doctor and Nardal are also investigating them, and it turns out that Harmony Soul are actually the aliens from The Husbands of River Song, the ones where you peel half the head and the brains in there. I'm sure a lot of people are going to find that disgusting, but it's Doctor Who, they're aliens. So yeah, there's going to be a few disgusting aliens in this series. Anyway, so the Harmony Soul aliens are planning to destroy New York City with their spaceship that serves as a nuclear bomb, and they're hoping that it will cause people to panic so that world leaders would then go to Harmony Soul buildings to be safe, as Harmony Soul building will be one of the few buildings left in New York that's still standing. And then Harmony Soul will replace all of the world leaders with their own the alien brain things that they have. And that's basically that plan. It's a pretty good plan, actually. So the Doctor and Nardal have to try and stop them. Meanwhile, the Ghost is also helping out as well, helping to save Lucy. And Harmony Soul start to go after him because they find him an interesting candidate. And there's some pretty great character stuff between the Doctor and the Ghost / Grant and Lucy. There's some really good character stuff. It's a pretty good character story. So, The Return of Doctor Mysterio. This isn't a highly popular story. It's not that generally liked, and I'm sorry, I can't see why. It's a great episode. This is a really great episode. Okay, it's not perfect, but I don't get the hate for it. I don't, or at least the dislike for it. The idea of having a superhero episode of Doctor Who is actually pretty interesting. Yeah, it is kind of riding the bandwagon of superheroes being popular in the mid-2010s, the superhero genre, but I think it handles it really well. There's some really interesting stuff, like the opening being a bit like a comic, and there's some bits later on where it's edited to be like comic slides, comic book slides on panels. It's handled well, and the episode itself does feel like it could be from a comic book superhero comics book. And I also think that the tone of the episode is probably the best merge of the two Peter Capaldi specials previously. It's kind of light-hearted, fun, and enjoyable, like Husband's River Song, but it's got some darker, not so nice alien elements as we saw in Last Christmas, and so I think it blends the best. So I think it blends the tone and the direction of the previous two Capaldi story Christmas specials. The first 9 minutes, which is basically the pre-title scene, it's probably one of the longest, if not the longest, pre-title scene in a Doctor Who episode. Certainly got to be up there. And it's a great way to introduce Grant and the Doctor and their relationship with each other, and Grant becoming the ghost. It's pretty interesting how it's all begins. Then, after the titles, we then jump to the present day, and we get the story starts properly. And considering that almost 10 minutes was dedicated to a pre-title scene, it's a pretty great 45-50 minute episode that has been extended to an hour. But with the extended pre-titles, it works pretty well. It works pretty effectively. And without that pre-title scene, I don't think this would have worked as a good normal episode with the condensed runtime. The villains in this story, I won't say are particularly brilliant, but I think they're good for what we got for this episode. It's good to bring back the villains from the last episode, Husbands of River Song, the brain creatures things, and have them as a bigger threat in this story, and we get a bit more about them, get to understand a bit more about them. I don't think the story with them is quite finished because it is leaving stuff open for their return in a later episode. Like this CEO guy that they take the brain of early on in the episode, and he becomes one of the main villains later on. He goes to the ghost and tries to threaten him and get a brain inside of him. That guy, he basically escapes and doesn't really face any consequences apart from the Doctor zapping his gun out of his hand. So that guy's still out there. He escapes, and also the brain thing that took over the body of this German doctor guy, Mr. Sin, Doctor Sin. Yeah, Doctor Sin, not to be confused with Mr. Sin from Talent of Wang Chiang. Doctor Sin, here the brain thing from his body goes into a unit soldier at the end. So those guys, they're still out there. Christ, and people criticise Chris Chibnall for letting villains off the hook and get away with stuff. And yet Moffat had already done it. I would have said maybe it's going to tie up in a third episode to around these creatures that they're going to appear one more time, but I was kind of expecting either an episode of Series 10 or the next Christmas special to do that. Maybe make a trilogy, a bit like what Chibnall's trying to do with the Daleks. Well, that's if the 2022 New Year special is a Dalek story. But Moffat never wrapped this story up. What a surprise. But yeah, it really does feel like there was going to be at least one more episode with these things. Maybe in Series 10, maybe the next Christmas special. But nope, that's it. It's just two appearances, and these guys are just gone. They escape, and we never see them again. So I'm hoping there's an episode later down the line where these guys pop up again, because it does feel like the door is left open. Or expanded media. Maybe expanded media could do something. Maybe once Peter Capaldi does Big Finish, maybe they can write an episode where Bill, and Nardole encounter these things. Speaking of the 12th Doctor, we finally come to the point where we kind of got the best of what he was in Series 8 and Series 9 merged, plus a little bit extra, and now we've got the version of the 12th Doctor most people prefer, the Series 10 version, and this is just the start. He's going to get even better over the series. The first episode of Class, which he had a appearance in, actually kind of foreshadowed this. He was very much how he is in Series 10 in that first episode of Class, and then this episode came a few months later, and it's brilliant. So the characterization is really great, and Capaldi once again does a fantastic performance. It's also interesting to know that he's kind of in mourning, so to speak, or he's missing River Song following their 24-year night on Beryllium, as seen in the last episode. At the end of that, and now that's over, he's sad because she's gone off to the library, and the events of Science in the Library Forest of the Dead. This kind of does feel like a bit of a afterthought to the River Song story for the Doctor, at least. It's kind of like this is what happens next for him. He's a bit sad and he's missing her, and this is seen again in parts of Series 10 as well. It's basically how the Doctor feels following these events, and it's interesting to see the 12th Doctor in some moments have a moment or two to be sad, on reflection about what's happened. On to Nardal. Now, he feels like we're about halfway between the very comic relief version of the character we saw in Husbands of River Song to the more serious version we're going to see later on in Series 10. He is more kind of comic relief at this stage. He's a bit more like the Husbands version, but he's not as silly or goofy as he was in that episode. He's toned it down a little bit, and there's a few serious moments that foreshadow what he's going to be like further into Series 10. Maybe not straight away in Series 10, but certainly as the series goes along, he's going to get more serious and more like the straight guy rather than straight guy is in terms of comedy, not in terms of sexuality. He's going to be the straight guy as opposed to the comic relief, which he was in Husbands, and that wasn't a very good version of that character. But as the series is going to progress, he's going to get more serious. And we're seeing some of those early signs in this episode, whilst also a lesser comic relief version of the Husbands version, but still some comic relief in there. Yeah, Nardal is still pretty fun. He's a fun character in this episode, and I like that we've toned down the comic relief and stuff, and we've started to add some of that seriousness stuff that's going to follow up in later episodes. Also, the explanation of how he came back. I think it's better done than how Strax was explained to come back in The Snowman, because that was like, wait, Strax died in Good Man Goes to War. How did he come back? How's he coming back with this one? And they have a very quick explanation, and it's just glossed over. Here, it makes a bit more sense as the Doctor feels lonely after River's passing, so he gets Nardal's head out of Hydroflax's body and gives Nardal a new body. And as we'll see in the series, in Series 10, he's going to have a robotic body. Maybe this experience has made Nardal mellow a bit, maybe grow up a little bit, maybe he gets a bit more serious. Plus, all of his time with the Doctor is going to show that development from what he is in Husbands, and over time he will develop to what he ends up being at the end of Series 10, which is a more serious character. As I mentioned. So yeah, the bit about the Doctor taking Nardal out of Hydroflax and giving him a new body, it's done quickly, but at least there's a kind of reason behind it. There's a bit more to it than just, oh, a friend of mine brought this guy back to life and now he's just back to life. No, there's actually a little bit more to this one, but yeah, it is kind of a bit overlooked at this point. But come Extremis in midway through the series, there's going to be a little bit more to it. As for the other supporting characters, I think Grant's a pretty good character, and also the Ghost, the two sides of them work pretty well together. I think Justin Chatwick does a good job. I know he gets a lot of flack from people for what characters he played in previous projects before this episode, but I think he does a good job in this episode. He does well, as does Charity Wakefield as Lucy, who is a pretty interesting character. She's basically the Lois Lane to Grant's Superman and Clark Kent, so to speak, except this Clark Kent's a nanny and not a reporter. This is probably some trying to tie in somehow with Clara or something, because she was a governess/nanny. So Stephen Moffat's probably trying to tie in with Clara in some way, as they've got some sort of a similar job, perhaps. But yeah, they're great characters. I really enjoyed the interactions around in the middle of the episode where they just talk with each other. They just talk, and it's pretty great stuff. Yeah, the squeezing of Mr. Bobblehead could be a little bit annoying, but I think that's the point. It's so that Lucy squeezes the not the bobblehead, whatever she squeezes, so that she can make the Doctor talk and tell the truth. And it's supposed to be annoying so that he would do that, because if he kept lying, he'll get that nasty sound in his ears. So yeah, it is probably a bit annoying, but that's the point. That's the point of the scene. Funny enough, I actually think the writing of this episode is pretty good. Yeah, there might be a few cheesy lines here and there, but it's a superhero love story with alien plot. It's going to be a bit cheesy. It's a superhero story, but I think it's written well. It's a pretty great character story. There's some pretty good sci-fi and superhero elements in there, and it's a pretty pretty well structured episode. On a visual level, it looks brilliant. Some really great visuals. There is a bit of editing I'm not so keen on around end of Act 2 area, where we're cutting back and forth from, not too quickly though, but gradually from Ghost and Lucy on a dinner date / interview to the Doctor and Nardal doing their thing. We do cut from one scene to another, not too quickly, but when we do cut to the Doctor and Nardal in the TARDIS from the Ghost and Lucy on the rooftop, it does feel a little bit jarring, especially with the change of music to the Doctor's theme, the 12th Doctor's theme, Stopping the Monsters, or a version of that. So it's a little bit jarring. But besides that, the editing is pretty strong and it looks really great, and the visuals look pretty brilliant. I more believe that they actually went to Japan in this episode than they do in Revolution of the Daleks. So this episode is actually really good. I'm not sure what it is about it that people don't like, other than maybe they just can't get on board with the superhero story. Maybe they think it's a bit too campy. Perhaps it's not as campy as Husbands, because that was supposed to be a pantomime episode. This one is a bit more serious, but it's because it's a superhero episode, superhero story episode, then it's going to be not too serious, but it's going to be a bit more serious than the pantomime episode. Maybe people just can't get on board with that. I'm not sure. Maybe some things they don't like. Maybe they don't like the aliens. Maybe they don't like Justin Chatwick. I'm not sure. But there's something that doesn't make people really connect with this one. There are people who do like it, like me, for example. But yeah, this one's not a hugely popular one, which is a shame because it's a ton of fun. It's a good episode. It's got some really great stuff in it. The character work is great. The villains could have had a bit more work, but, they're all right for what they are, and they've got a pretty great plan, come to think of it. Even the Doctor says so. And, yeah, I think this episode is just a pretty great episode, and it's a fun Christmas adventure. So, yeah, I'm not sure what people's major problems are. If you've got major issues, put them down below. Maybe it's personal, maybe subjective, maybe it's objective. Just put them down below. Don't forget to be nice about them. But, yeah. As for me, I will be giving the Return of Doctor Mysterio a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's perfect, but it's a fun Christmas special, and it's easily the best Stephen Moffat written Christmas special, and probably the best Christmas special since The Voyage of the Damned. Sorry for anybody who prefers any of the ones that come before, although I'm not sure how many of those people would say The Doctor's Widow and the Wardrobe or The Snowmen. But yeah, I find this one to be the best of the Christmas special since Voyage of the Damned, and it's whilst there are some Moffat specials that has a score the same as some of the Russell T Davies ones, I would say all of the Russell T Davies ones would be better than that one, and then better than the other Moffat specials, except for this one, because this one I think is probably my third favourite of the Christmas specials as a whole. It's certainly top 5 at least. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great one, and it took Moffat 7 Christmas specials to get it right. Okay, I did like Time of the Doctor, but that was more of the 11th Doctor wrap-up story rather than a Christmas special or a standalone episode. And also that had a few not so good elements in it. And I could give Husbands of River Song. Did I give that 7 or an 8? I think I gave it an 8. But that was more for enjoyability. This one's generally good. This is a generally good episode. So after 7 attempts, Moffat finally has an episode that at least rivals some of the Russell T Davies ones in the Christmas specials. Whilst the ones before that, they either just miss it or nowhere near as good. So here we are, Stephen Moffat's best Doctor Who Christmas special, and a great way to start Series 10. So thank you for watching my review of Doctor Who The Return of Doctor Mysterio. Next time, Series 10 begins properly with the pilot. I'll see you guys then. Goodbye. Oh my god, he's real. Who's real? The ghost. Who's the ghost? Master Vigilante, but he's super. Mind if I come in? Impressive. Those windows, along with everything else in this building, have been built to withstand the blast of a full nuclear explosion. Sorry about that. Do you want me to call a glacier? You know it's against my personal code to cause or an everlasting injury to any person. Ah! However, multi-moderate injuries is acceptable. He seems nice. still didn't answer one question. Doctor Who? Doctor Mysterio. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.